Hi, hello, hello everybody. I see even more people joining in. It's a pleasure to have you for this webinar today. It's as a service, a path to circular success. It is a webinar that is organized within the Circular Economy Week 2023, that is co-organized by London. So this, yeah, I would really like to thank you today. And first, before we start, it's important to define a bit what is as a service. And so to us, this is a subscription model that combines a tangible product with services accompanied by services like repair and maintenance. And for example, you can have office as service where a provider will provide all the IT equipment company needs, and throughout the duration of the contract will receive all the maintenance and repairs the equipment needs. So this webinar is intended for both users and providers of as a service. And so if you have any question, please put them in the chat and I'll shoot them to the speakers. This event is also recorded, so you will receive a copy of that record at the end of the webinar. So now it's time to share with you our great speakers. First, we have Yann Toutan, who is the co-founder and CEO at Blackwinch, the as-a-service expert. And he's also the author of As a Service, Turn Your Product-Based Business Subscription Model. And Jan really lives with as a service because he really made his life mission to support people and businesses transition from from ownership to usership, sorry, and to turn, of course, to circularity. Then we have Yann Agri, who is the CEO and co-founder at Tricircular AB. And he's also a circular expert at Blackwinch. And his both expertise in circularity and purchase service really give great insight for all businesses looking to integrate sustainability within their core values. And he's currently concluding a research project on as a service based on tests of white goods as a service and appliances as a service, and obviously, of course, linked to the circular economy. And last but not least, we have Pete Fisher, who is a senior buyer and contract management at the Ministry of the Interior and Kingdom Relations at Shared Services Center, SSICT, in the Netherlands. He's specializing in strategic sourcing and contract management, and he plays really a very important role in contract success management with suppliers, and especially for a governmental entity. So all of you, thank you very much for joining us today and sharing all your insights. So without further ado, let's start with the first question. How can product as service models contribute to accelerating the circular economy? Maybe Yann Toutan, you want to start?
Sure. Hello everyone, I'm very pleased to be here today talking about circular business models related to as a service. To be short, how does those two matters connect? Where we believe that when you enter into a as a service business model, there are some aspects of the offer that make your offer directly circular. And one of them is, first of all, the aspect of the performance, because when you offer as a service, it's about a performance. It's not about a product anymore. It's about the outcome of this product. If I offer air compressors, I'm not offering this product. I'm offering compressed air per cubic meters, for example. So in this situation, the provider has to make sure that the equipment remains delivering the agreed performance. So the equipment will remain in its best operational condition. That's a commitment from the supplier. So we can talk about maintenance, we can talk about proactive maintenance. There are many aspects related to that, but that means that the equipment will remain as good as day one during the whole usage life cycle. And that's very important because this equipment then can be reused by another user after, because it's perfectly maintained in its best operational condition. The second aspect is the concentration of ownership. as a provider or as a service, I'm not transferring the ownership to my users. I keep the ownership. I just transfer the usage. So there is a concentration of ownership of all the goods at one party, which is or the manufacturer or the integrator, which means that when you are the owner of, 2 million cooling units, you will have the opportunity, of course, to collect them and to address a second life or recycling opportunity for those devices with a scaling effect, which is much better than having all those devices being spread at the different users. And I would say the last aspect of that I'd like to mention right now is the fact that when you are a manufacturer and you start to see your product coming back, then of course you will start to design them for the next generation, knowing that it will come back. So we are talking about eco-design, which is, of course, mainly supported by as a service, because you remain the owner, they come back to you. So once you are used to see them coming back, of course, you will start to design them in a way that you can reintegrate them in a production process or provide them a second or a third life cycle. So 3 elements just to start on this today. Maintain as good as day one, concentration of ownership, and the eco-design related to the fact that the equipment are coming back. I would have much more to say, but we are limited by time, of course.
Of course, we only have 1 hour. Anybody, Jan or Piet, do you want to add anything on this question?
Yeah, just Jan, you can start.
Thank you. I was going to say the resource efficiency of longer life is critical. Something that Jan didn't mention that I've come across is that you can also, as a provider as a service solution, learn how products are best used and teach your customers to use them as well as possible. Maybe even include them in the preventative maintenance, but in particular to use them in a way that creates as much value and as little environmental impact as possible. So that's my really only suggestion, to add something to what Jan already said. Thank you.
Just to add on a little, I look a little different from the picture that's shown before, but I'm on holiday and I'm sitting in a tent, so it could be a bit noisy of the wind, but I apologize in beforehand for that. If we look at the product as a service from a governmental perspective, it's like we also have to be an example to the rest of the society. So it's very important to have this as a service, as a contribution to circular, as well as a sustainable role we have to show as a government. We don't have to acquire all the goods itself. We can only use it, which is a totally new perspective for the Dutch government. But it took a long way, but slowly we're adopting this way of model, whether it's end users devices or it's backend. We all trying to get to that new way and make a contribution to circular and a sustainable world.
Right. Well said. And talking about this change, how does product as service concept change the way consumers and businesses perceive the ownership and the use of those resources?
I'll take this one. I love to say, be gentle with the rental, because it rhymes, so it sounds good. But I like this tagline: be gentle with the rental. We have all the tendency, when we rent cars or when we as a consumer, when we use a rental product, we have the tendency to use it and to address it maybe with a bit less respect that we would address our own goods, our own possession, which is a wrong approach. Because if you are gentle with the rental, you will make sure that this rental or this device can have a second life and can be used by someone else in a good way. So I would insist on the shift of mindset to respect even more the equipment that you don't own, so there is a long life cycle possible for those equipments. Be gentle with the rental.
Nice saying.
I can contribute a little on that one, because we see with this product as a server also a shift in behavior of the Dutch governmental employees. Whether before we owe everyone, you see they get a little bit of ignorance about their use of the product. Yeah, we own it and now it will be destroyed anyway. which is not a very circular way, of course. But the mind shift is, if we, as Jan said, be gentle with the rental, it also will be an economical benefit, because if you give the product in a good way back, it can contribute to the TCO, but we will come back on that later. So we try to have this behavior shift as well.
Right. And maybe Jan, agree on this question. How is it perceived in regard to the circular economy?
But specifically with regards to resource efficiency and the circular economy, there are some segments, especially when it comes to consumers, that are interested in as a service exactly because of this. But there are others that maybe don't have the same sustainability interest. And I think there are several ways that you can address this question. I think what I've seen is that consumers actually do take better care than it has been expected. In the white goods arena, there's been rental in decades back, and people did not take care of them. But today, that seems to be very different. And also, I think the fact that the ownership remains, as Jan said, with the supplier also has a reason and a natural role in communicating about the products. And this way, you can build this respect that Pete mentioned, that it's not actually our organization's goods and the pricing mechanism saying that if you drop too many a device or a computer too many times, you will not get the residual value. But we will come back to that a little bit. But the communication, I think, is very central, that you have an ongoing relationship with the provider.
Right. I have a quick question there from the chat from Jens Leffler. I hope I'm pronouncing right. What other companies around the company providing the services will need to change the way of doing business for the circular economy to work, such as banks, insurance companies, recyclers, etc.?
Well, I would say what all those organizations are missing out is the lifetime value of a device. Everybody's still thinking in units. How many units we've sold, how many units we've been financing, how many units we've been recycling. But this unit measure is from the old world. I would say in the new world, it's about lifetime value. So it's more about what is the value we have been able to extract from this product during this whole lifetime as a manufacturer, and as a user, what is the value that this device has contributed to our business, to our goals. So lifetime value. But I know, Jan, you're a big fan of lifetime value topic.
Yeah, I would say it's very clear based on the very strong development of software as a service, that investors and banks are waking up to the fact that if you can have an ongoing relationship and reoccurring revenues, it's very, very positive. So there's a strong interest, at least among the front runners in the investor community and equipment finance community, to investigate this. And this, I think, is necessary, Jens. And I'm very happy that you joined. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
Friend of mine.
Also, if I may, I don't know if you can hear me.
Sure, please.
Okay, this is David from Spain. Sorry, I cannot open my camera. I was trying, but I cannot. So one of the things also is that maybe sometimes the mindset of the customers also have to change, no? Because sometimes when you are talking about products, maybe if we swap the mindset from the customers to say, okay, this is what I need to do. This is the workloads I will need to perform. And so instead of saying, I need 5 servers with this configuration, because then when the life cycle is ending, let's say, they will always say to you, okay, I will need the newest CPU in the market. I will need the newest memory in the market. So the life cycle is difficult with this mindset of the customers sometimes. I don't know if you get what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
It's not only the customer, but also the vendors has go a journey. let's not take that into account that everyone thinks, oh, it's only the customers, but also the different vendors have to make a different mindset.
Yeah,
to help.
I think it is a change in the market itself.
Yes, yeah, especially.
Yeah.
But as a supplier, if you want to start this, I think it's critical that you find the more mature customers, the customers that are willing to co-create together with you based on this understanding that it's really the functionality or a service that you need, not the ownership. It makes it so much easier if you can start with a few of those and then prove the concept and then carry on, rather than to take customers that are, like you said, David, not mature and will have to take all the steps up to understand the maturity.
I agree. Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you.
Good, thank you. Okay, our next question is maybe a bit linked to our just conversation. What are the challenges of integrating the circular economy into the unique selling point, USP, of a product service model? Who wants to start?
We often have discussions about situations that we face where you see customers or end users asking to suppliers, how can your as a service product or solution be more circular than for me buying it? You know, if I buy your product or if I use them as a service, how is as a service more circular? This is a question that is coming more and more often from public entities and for corporate organizations, and it's a very difficult question to answer at this stage. Why? Because there's no authority yet, so there's no like ISO certification bodies that would certify the circularity of as a service business model. I hope it will come. So if there's no a unified way to prove it, you have to define your own KPIs. And this is something, as Jan was mentioning, something you can define together with the end user. What are the KPIs that will also make sure that your end user will reach his corporate social responsibility goals with your as a service offer? So there are a lot of KPIs that can be defined there. But this is a question that should be anticipated. So for all the, I would say, all the users in the room, ask this question to your suppliers, because that will force them to make the move. And for the suppliers in this room, be ready to get this question and have some answers to be able to show some KPIs that you can line up.
And a small contribution on that, Jan, is that if we, for instance, in my position, we have a huge bargaining power, which can force the market also to change. Although we're small in the Netherlands, we're quite advanced in this as a servers. So you see, most vendors are saying, well, we don't do it, and then you come with the bargaining power, and then they also willing to change, because it's what you already mentioned before. It's a mind shift.
A completely different perspective is to say that if without changing this sort of volume-based, trying to sell as many things as possible, to a value-based, trying to create as much value as possible with as few products as possible, we will not go circular. It's impossible to keep the old mindset. So this enables a circular development, but it doesn't guarantee it. As Jan said, you need to find the proper KPIs. But as a provider, you can say, we thought this through, this is the way we're going to go ahead, we will learn, but we need to change. Will you come along with us on this journey? And as a supplier, you can just say that we will not, in the long run, continue to just buy and throw away things. We need to find another way. And based on the research that Solène mentioned that I'm engaged in, this has been a very positive and so it's an engaging starting point. And this is, I think, again, important when you start to create a new business model. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. On this topic, I have our first poll question to everybody, and it will appear in front of your screen. Have you ever seen standards like ISO that allow you to tell the difference between a purchasing model and product as a service as to its impact on circularity? So if you have, please comment, and if not, please comment. I'll leave it on for just a couple of minutes. And I see most people have not seen such a model, which is also the observation we've made. It's we have seen some KPIs, but such a model like ISO on circularity and prioritized services has still yet to be invented by us, all of us. Yeah, I think you should see the response on your screen, and we have 100% of no, despite all the replies. So this is exactly what we expected. So if we continue, all right. So now let's take as a service from the manufacturer's side. So from the provider's side, what are the steps a manufacturer goes through to enable product as a service circular offers? Basically, just how easy is it, or how hard is it?
Jan?
It is hard, but it's also there are methodologies to do this, and I think I already mentioned, and this is something that Jan and I have discussed, the fact that you can segment your market and find the more favorable, the more mature customer segment to start with. But another challenge, I think, for many producers of equipment and machines is that we're going from the transaction sale to an ongoing relationship. I think I mentioned that before. And it's a service design aspect. Most companies need to start with the products they have. Eventually they learn and can redesign products, but they need to see this as a relationship. And this is a challenge, but again, there are many benchmarks that can be made with not least software as a service. Jan, what do you say?
Yeah. What I see a lot from manufacturers is that there's a lot of efforts put to be carbon neutral in the supply chain aspect. So our factories are carbon neutral, our devices are being manufactured with recycled raw materials. We ship by boats, etc., etc. So you see all those efforts until the equipment arrives in the hands of the user, and then it stops. Then the story about being carbon neutral stops. And I think this is where there's a lot to do as a manufacturer, is to continue this story, because it's a lot of investments being done in the supply chain, and it's great, all those efforts. But if they stop when the equipment is being provided to the user, then this is halfway of the job that has been done. So continuing by keeping the ownership, maintaining as good as they want, as I mentioned, but also making sure that the equipment is collected properly and has the possibility to have a second life, or third life, and then being recycled by the manufacturer. So there's a lot being done already, but it is not being communicated as part of the circularity effort. But a lot of manufacturers already have their recycling centers, already have another service offer where they collect the equipment at the end of the term. But this is not integrated in the carbon neutral journey of the device. Very often this journey stops when the user starts using the product. So it's there, it's just communication and awareness.
Right. And also still continuing on this down to earth economic matters, what is the role of financing when it comes to supporting and enabling product as service, or circular product as service?
Yeah, there are of course aspects of financing that are related to as a service in general, because the cash to order is very different. When you went to as a service model, you are waiting for 3 years, 4 years, 5 years to get the money back, and you have to invest upfront in the equipment. So the cash to order is specific, and there are some special financing techniques to make this happen and to keep cash under control and revenue recognition also under control. But when it comes to financing in a circular as a service model, you can go further. And I know Jan is much more geared than myself to talk about that, financing of circular business model.
Well, financing, you can. My understanding is you can always look at the financing department, so to speak, and they have challenges that Jan addressed. But if you talk about the partners outside of the company, like Jens referred to, investors or banks, there seems to be a lot of learning that needs to be built, so to speak. But we also have developed within Blackwinch a way of thinking about how you can get started and what you need to do regarding how much money is really tied into the as a service fleet. And I can also add that I participated in a large study last year in Sweden, and there we focused on small companies and startups, and they generally thought that this was quite hard. On the other hand, I've come across several large companies that have started to do as-a-service business models, and they can finance it out of their own pocket because it's not so much when you get started. But you need to think about a plan for how, when you scale this up, how you work with the money you have, the money you need to get specifically for this. And this is all about how you sort of the capital used, and then when it comes to the internal the bookings of earnings and the residual value, how you book that and all this, I will not go into that right now. Thank you.
Very
Yeah,
good.
but then it's interesting. Then it comes to my terms, how be interested as a governmental organization and reliable for payments. And then the buying power we have as the organization we're working currently for, then you can seduce the bankers as well as the manufacturers to understand that hey, maybe it's the way forward because the revenues will be equally and will be predictable for the next 4 or 5 years, which is very essential for many manufacturers, but also for banking. And as a Dutch government, you have not peaks in your budget, but you have a straight line budget, which makes it more predictable.
So then, if I may, I would like to add the fact that this is also part of the big change we see when the EU taxonomy and there within what is referred to as green, we have as a service as a defined area for having a green solution. And I think in specifics, they say if you can show that a product is used twice as much as that's related to intensity or twice as long, then it qualifies as a green solution in the taxonomy. I also know that of companies working in this area that have gotten green bonds or been financed using green bonds because there's such a strong link between prolonged life and resource efficiency of as a service that they have then been able to get loans. I think, for instance, of one company got that from the European Investment Bank, and that shows up in their earnings in the sense because the cost of capital goes down if you can get a green bond, of course.
Right. I think what you just said replies to one of the questions in the chat from Melanie Robinson about how those regulations play a role in product and service at this stage, which is yes, or at least in our current region, in the EU, which I'm not sure about other regions in the world, but EU is still one of the most advanced, at least to integrate these sustainable business models. I have another comment/question from Mark. Even though there are plenty of public procurement processes that foster the as-a-service business models, such as municipality service contracts, water, lighting, waste, etc., most of the tendering text refer back to product functionality and specification. As Pete mentioned, that governments need to drive with the example. What are the options to change laws that govern such tendering options? As I believe the private sector will definitely follow public initiative.
Yeah, that's the big challenge. Yeah, I'm talking so easily about it, but as you might know, the journey we came with our organization took 3.5 years to come from buying the product as a product as a service, which is hard because you have also this buying regulations by European law, but there are possibilities. It's not only buying a possibility, but you can also rent or lease. It's use those terms within your RFPs, and it really makes it possible. But it's not an easy way. I will come back on that later. But it's possible. But you need some creativity, but it's not impossible.
I'm under the impression that people exaggerate the difficulties, and I'm saying this based on my experience from public purchasing of white goods in Sweden. We in the research project that Solen mentioned, we looked at public housing or municipal housing owned by municipal companies, and they are under the legal framework of public purchasing. The challenge is not that they cannot do this, it's rather that they are inexperienced. It takes different competence. And there seems to be a very strong interest for as a service when it comes to new technologies such as batteries or energy-related systems. And it's quite possible to do it when you buy something like that that's rather big and you keep it for a long time. And as Pete said, you pay on a regular basis and everything is guaranteed, the performance is guaranteed. But when it comes to white goods, where you have a continuous replacement, there is somewhat of a challenge, because typically a contract is negotiated for a specific period of time. And during this time, you can buy the functionality or as a service. But after that period of time, there needs to be a renegotiation or a new request for proposals. And this could lead to inefficiencies from a supplier perspective, because you typically, as Jan said initially, needs or you can or benefit from the economies of scale if you have a lot of products at the customers or in a region. And if that's cut short every 3 or 4 years, depending on the local regulations, it's a challenge. But there's nothing stopping it. It's rather an economic question for the supplier and the price of the product.
Very interesting. Okay, let's continue. And if we go back a little bit on the manufacturer's side point of view, how does product and service shift businesses from sales of volume to value?
For me, that's the key question. Of course, it is about offering a performance instead of a product. So I don't need a cooling unit. I need a climate control. I don't need air compressor. I need compressed air. And the list can be long. The famous one is that I don't need a drill. I need a hole in my wall. So here the model is to be able to offer the end user a performance that will contribute to his business goals while committing to this performance. And that's an extra layer, I would say, in the complexity of the previous leasing models, where the risk were only the insolvency of the end user. Now there's also a performance risk attached to it. So basically, in other words, if you don't provide the expected performance, you might expect not to be paid. So this is how you shift from a sales of volume to sale of value. And there are some mitigants, of course, to this risk. There are some models already existing. But the main mindset is to say, okay, I'm going to provide a performance. I'm not going to provide a product anymore. I'm going to provide an outcome. And some meters to measure this outcome. Yeah.
I think the promise of shifting from an economy that is based where suppliers make more money the more they sell, and In unfortunate cases, maybe they don't want to design things that last long enough, or the price pressure is so that they cannot sell things that last long enough. And the promise then of as a service is that a shift to performance would create incentives for designing products that last longer. But there's also a complexity in this world where we fight the climate change, because if products very quickly become more energy efficient, there's a reason that you need to change products, or at least the part of the product, the module that is hopefully becoming more energy efficient. On the other hand, furniture with no energy required to be used, they should just last as long as possible. And if you look at antiques, that's what they do. They are used for hundreds of years. So there's somewhat a difference between different product categories. But the idea is, of course, that if the supplier can make money without making and taking the cost of making new products, it is just good business sense to focus on value and refrain from having large volumes of production.
Right. And then what is the role of digitalization as an enabler of product and service?
It's a fantastic enabler. And as I mentioned, software as a service, of course, was created in a digital universe or a digital industry. And in turn, software as a service took a lot of learnings from telecoms, which also has become digital. And there you have this focus on understanding relationships, subscriptions, personalization. And all this is very, very important when you create the relationships that as a service is all about. On top of that, with IoT, the Internet of Things, the machines and the products that we talk about here when we talk about product as a service, will also create a lot of opportunity to make sure that this performance that is guaranteed is actually there, preventative maintenance, but also for learning and innovation. So you cannot overestimate the importance of digitalization, I would say. Jan, what do you think?
Yeah, of course, it is about ongoing data communication with the user. So how is the user using the platform with many purposes of maintenance, of making sure that the platform is the right one according to the needs. It's a way also to bill based on a usage, so to have the right meters to be able to bill based on usage. And it's also a way to make sure that you offer the best solution to your customer, because if you're in a plan where the customer is overusing the plan, then it's good to change, the plan and the subscription model according to the usage. It requires the user to agree to share data about his usage, which can be sometimes very close to his core business. So again, the trust and the long-term relationship is there. This is a common interest of going in this direction. So it's key. I mean, digitalization is, you can't do it without.
And to add on a little on that one, because if you see the users, the user base we have is about 35 to 40,000 knowledge workers. We have also big data for the vendors, because they pretend their end user or the backend devices will last, for instance, 4 years. But if you have big numbers, you can do analytics and say, hey, we see it's above your average or below average. What's happening? And that's also interesting to challenge those vendors with those data. And you never have had that before if you didn't have any digitalization.
Right. And on that, there is a question from Jacques Van Mil. Do you expect that from a buyer's perspective, are buyers prepared to pay more for sustainable products that are more expensive, either through CapEx or OpEx?
I think, and it's not only a more expensive product, but it has also residue value. So if it's a product that lasts longer, at the end has a higher value. So we come back on that one later on. But there's also a connection, of course, of that.
It is a very important question, and value today is too much, I would say, focused on price at the point of purchase. But there's so much more value that can be created, and part of that value is the lower carbon footprint and sustainability. But as we are discussing, it's also about creating value in supporting the performance, guaranteeing the performance, supporting the usership, so that the customer can get the most out of this product. So as David was saying, there needs to be a maturity to discuss these things. And I think that there are many organizations that are now looking to find ways to do business and purchasing that is including other values than just looking at the price at the point of purchase.
Okay, I hope that answers your question, Jack. I have another question from Mark. To add a little bit of controversy, isn't it digitalization embedded in product, like smart devices or IoT, a natural enemy of long-lasting products as innovation cycles are simply too fast? Or digitalization per se will force circularity to precisely keep up the innovation cycles? Who wants to start on this difficult question? And
I think we should use the vendors also to take into that modern justification with all the digitalization that a product could be upgraded somehow to keep up this digitalization sprint or digitalization that goes on and on and on. If you don't think about that in forehand with designing your product, you will never keep up and therefore never be sustainable. But Jan, I'm getting on your type of field, but that's the way you see it from a customer perspective.
Jan, you want to go or should I go?
I think you're more equipped than I on this matter.
I think it's a very good question, but it's also a little bit of a simplification in the sense. I think segmentation is extremely important here, and we don't all need to have the same devices. Our personal needs or professional needs vary, and very much of what we talk about here is to go from one size fits all to have customized solutions. So there's an opportunity to use pre-loved products, as we like to say, even if they're a few years old, and they can be perfectly fine. Then again, to address the importance in this question is also that you need to work with, or it would be really great if we can work with modular products. So you could, for instance, repair or upgrade the camera in a smartphone or other things like this. But just to say that digitalization would necessarily obstruct here, I'm not quite sure. And digitalization is not just about what's in the products. It's very much about what we said with IoT, the management of data, AI and big data analytics. This is also very, very important. And it's possible that, like Pete said, that we should have rather simple technology in the products, and then rather to be able to upgrade them with software updates. And I would imagine that this will happen just because of this, because if everything is out there in the product, it will make this harder to make this business model work.
I see the time is when we only have 15 minutes, so trying to keep it to the point. On the user's point of view, product as a service requires a lot of changes, and one of the most important one is behavioral changes. So how do you onboard people to accept those changes? Pete, do you want to start?
I laugh a little because if you see my journey like 3.5, 4 years ago, it convinced a lot of patients. A lot of people who say we don't do it, we don't know it, it can't be done. No, we don't do it. No, it's not possible within the accounting rules. There will be many, many, many no's. I don't know how many no's I conquered, but it's Jan, you laugh about it, but we have been a very long journey to convince those people, but it's not as a procurement side. You also have to understand a bit about financials, but also about accounting, which is quite unique for procurement people to understand those rules as well, to convince the people and show what's really possible and why it's not only technical but financially, but also behavior. It's wise. It's good to do product as a service. But it's hard to convince not only your colleagues but also the middle management, and at least the top management, because you see that when it's new, they got a cold water fear, as we call it in Holland. And now we jumped into the water, and they understand why we didn't do it before. Yeah, you told me 3.5 years ago. Then I tried to explain it, but now within our organization we're quite used to it, and they want to move on. But it's not easy. It's not easy, but it's fun to do. It's kind of fun to do the impossible. Quoting Walt Disney.
Jan Touton, do you have anything you want to add?
Yeah, well, I think it is for the manufacturer to offer an as-a-service solution is a journey that should be holistic. Indeed, sales, finance, research and development, marketing, but it's the same, in fact, for the buyer, for the user. There's also some impact on the organization in terms of sales, in terms of finance, in terms of, sorry, not sales, but purchasing, finance. So it is not to be underestimated. There is a journey to be done by the user, by the buyers, and this journey has to be, you have to help the users to make this journey, also internally. So it's good to have a champion that is convinced and that's gonna help the provider to make this journey internally in his own organization.
Yeah, but the fun as to a little add on that one, because I see also different vendors. It's also on the vendor side was quite unique, because vendors were saying, well, it's never going to work. What you will want to do, you're never going to achieve. Watch my words. And then yeah, it's kind of fun to also take them into their journey. Yeah? You shouldn't forget, it's not an internal journey, but also an external journey to make. And we both have to grow and to find the way. Let's be honest on that one.
No, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, let's continue a bit. So we have seen that there are many circular benefits, like efficient use of resources, etc. What are the financial advantages of a circular product as a service solution?
Yeah, I love this one, because I used to say, if I enter a boardroom and I talk about circularity, I will very quickly lose the attention of the people in the room. If I enter a boardroom and I talk about as a service, then I get everybody listening, because it's a shiny object about predictable revenue, scalability, customer stickiness, barrier of entry of competition. So I believe that as a service is a Trojan horse to approach circularity for organizations, to create traction and attention on it, and not the way around. So it's not circularity is promoted by as a service. No, it's as a service promoting circularity. My experience shows me that this is the way we are able to land it. So we all want to implement circular business model. What are the keys? I think one of the key is as a service, to get the attention of board members that have ambitions to create shareholders value, and this is definitely the case.
Right. I have a question from the chat that is related to that question in a way, from Martin Shaw. Many customers want as a service, but with flexibility of volume and services. How do you offer flexibility and therefore financial advantage while retaining a focus on sustainability?
That's as a customer, you have to be a little bit predictable. That's very essential as a product, as a service. From our organizations, if you see it 4 years ago, we weren't predicted in the life cycle management, but we have an accuracy of being predictable for 85 till 90%, which is huge. But makes it also understandable, and we seduce the vendors with that we are so reliable that it could be interest for them. And that's, of course, essential.
Yeah, I think flexibility is very often also a discussion at the moment of signing the contract, but using flexibility is not that intense as agreed upfront, because flexibility has a cost. So it's not, it's very often an marketing argument, but not always implemented. But if flexibility kicks in, of course, it's the role of the manufacturer to have mitigants in case the flexibility kicks in. 2 types of flexibility, and opt-in, opt-out, or pay-per-use. So you can have an earlier opt-in than expected, or a lower usage than expected, and you have to prevail yourself, and there are mitigants for those risks to make sure that it's not impacting your business.
No, but as a customer, you have to be aware as well that you need to have a certain amount of flexibility, and if you pass those lines, of course, it comes as a cost. Let's be honest to each other. You can't always request all the flexibilities from the vendors involved.
Just as a comment, because I guess that flexibility is also related to the sustainability at the end, no? Because one of the key things of the sustainability is to avoid over provisioning of the infrastructures that the customers are buying at the end, no? So if they have 30% more than they will use over 5 years, at the end, this is a waste of materials, waste of money, and waste of everything. So I agree that the cost maybe is a bit higher when you apply flexibility to the projects, let's say. But this is coming back to the topic of the maturity of the market sometimes, no? That it has to be understood that flexibility is a bit more expensive, but also you have other values or other added values behind. So.
But this also makes it extremely important that when you sign the contract and enter into the relationship, that you're both parties trying to assess exactly what's necessary, so that you don't have this overconsumption, as you refer to, David. But then I also know of companies that work with digital devices that they are capable of keeping track of them. So if they find that their specific device is not being used, they tell the customer that ship it back. You're not using it. We deduct that on the contract.
Yeah.
So there are ways of dealing with this, but I think to be very diligent in the very beginning, and then to have a clear cost structure, as Pete said, that you try to do this right, and you try to help each other, so to speak. But if you need to get out, there will be a cost.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. Thank you, David, for your comments. One last question. How does product and service affect the quality of the long-term relationships between the provider and the user? Yeah.
It's ongoing. It's building continuous engagement between parties. So when you are on transactional business model, it's more hit and run. You sell and you disappear for 3 years. When you're into as a service, you have a daily, or let's say a monthly contact with the brand and with the users to monitor the performance and to be sure that the solution is at the expected level. So I believe this is a way to to increase the long-term relationship, because you really enter into a partnership.
It's definitely an opportunity, and as a provider, you should try to provide as much value over time, not just once, as Jan said. And there's an interesting example. Electrolux not only works with white goods, they also work with robotic vacuum cleaners. And in Stockholm right now, they're provided as a subscription. And as you may know, all robotic vacuum cleaners use brushes to get the dust into the container where it goes. And after a while, they need to be replaced. So when in this subscription, Electrolux provides new brushes, the customer is really happy, because it means that someone is looking out for them and making sure that the performance, as we discussed earlier, is there. And the engagement in the service always goes up when this has happened. So this, again, there's an opportunity for this ongoing engagement and support from the supplier. And it's always more costly to get a new customer than to keep the ones that you already have in a happy mode and be continuous customers.
Yeah, but to add on that one, it's a little bit it's based on trust. This as a service, as we call it. Maybe you couldn't see it as a forced marriage, but like in every marriage or living together, you need to both make the best of it. And not always point to each other, like from a procurement and sales perspective, but okay, let's see what's on the table and how we can work it out, because your engagement or your marriage will be another 5 years. So you can fight. That's one way, but for the circular goal is we're working closely together. That's really want to give away. It's very essential for that one.
Yeah, I think we have the title of our next webinar: how to make the best of your marriage.
Absolutely. That's a nice expression to conclude our webinar, because I see we have 3 minutes left. So thank you very much for joining. We have learned many things, that circularity and as a service, product as a service are very closely linked, that there are challenges and opportunities, great opportunities on both the provider and the user side. Is there one last thing that you'd like the audience to remember? That one thing that if they have to, they can forget everything except that one thing.
Yeah, don't forget the TCO. TCO could really be beneficial. All those are your as a device as a service. Don't underestimate. We have good practices, and it really, really saves a lot of money. Besides a good marriage, you also have some money to spend on a glass of wine.
I'd like to repeat what I said earlier on, that as a service makes it possible to go in a sustainable direction, in a circular direction, whereas the traditional transactional business model, it makes it very, very hard. This means that we all need to look out for how to go in this direction. And even if you take small steps by improving the quality of the products, etc., it's important in the longer run. So there's no way to hide.
I would say it's a win-win-win. It's a win for the business, the provider. It's a win for the user, and it's a win for the environment. So it is. The question is not should we do it. The question is when do we start? Next fiscal year, next quarter.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you to the
3
three of
o'clock Dutch time, I think. 3 o'clock Dutch time, I think, Jan.
You start at 3 o'clock today. Good.
Yeah.
Very good. Here, let me share my screen real quick, so you can, if you want to connect with any of our 3 speakers today, you can scan the code and connect with them on LinkedIn. Also, please don't, if you have any question or comments, you have my email address, because I spammed you with the reminders of this event, so you can use that email address for good use. Thank you very much to everybody.
Thanks very much. Very interesting.
Pauline, thanks for your hostship.
Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.